Hey everyone, Warwick here from Network Platforms. Today I'm going to show you how to use our VoIP panel to set up your reseller account, your settings, your default users, and your default subsettings for client connections. To start off with, you're going to log on to the VoIP panel. It's a standard HTTPS site. In this case, I'm using our demo reseller account. So we use demo reseller.voippanel.io/billing. The /billing is very important. If you don't put /billing in there, you will get an error page. And the first part will be your unique reseller URL, which would have been provided upon sign up to the system. From here, we just log on. So in this case, I'm a demo reseller with my unique password. You'll get to the standard dashboard page. From here, we're going to set up the settings. So I just click on settings. This is where you'll set up the unique details about your company, the email address that you want to use. The version number appears at the bottom. So this version, VoIP Panel X17, appears at the bottom. So we could just, for example, make it VoIP Panel, hit save, and you'll see the bottom would have changed in the footer to VoIP Panel. No longer says the X17. I could change that to Demo Reseller and save that. And it would be now Demo Reseller. The piece behind that, the Buy Demo Reseller, that is in the copyright, and that you can change. It's standard HTML details. The browser title is the piece that appears on the tab or on the browser. So we could drop off, for example, the VoIP panel, hit save, and you'll see that will now change to just Demo Reseller and the position we are on in the menu system. The logo, I'm sure you'd like to change. That is literally just browsing for a PNG file. So at the moment I'm using that one. I'll just use our Network Platforms one, hit change, save it, and you'll see it will change. Well, it should have changed. Maybe I did something wrong. Save the changes. There we go. Network Platforms, and you see that's resized it on the top bar of the screen as well. If we log off, we should see that logo there again. Just log back in again. And there we go. The next thing we want to do is set up your other settings. So that'll be your registrations. This would be if you wanted to enable auto registration of users. I wouldn't recommend doing that, as it tends to be a fraud destination. There's a whole bunch of various other settings that you can do. You could change, for example, the date format. The system automatically comes in year, month, day. I prefer day, month, year, so I'll change that around already and save that. You can also change your decimal separators and your column separators as you want. That's useful when exporting CSV files. I would leave it on the default. For South Africa, we use a full stop and a column as a comma. On invoices, this would what would appear on your invoicing. So you want to start at a specific number for the invoices. You want to change the format from the two that are available. How long do you want to have the number sequence? What day do you want invoices to be dated on? Addresses, you can change what appears, bank details. Invoice page limit, so your invoices will be limited to a certain number of pages and then would break into another. It sounds big, but remember the invoices contain the CDR records as well. on the invoices any additional information. So you want some additional information to appear on a separate page. If you are exporting invoices in Excel format, here's the template and where you want things to go. Functionality, allow recalculation. So you can create an invoice, but you could recalculate it later on if you enable this. Useful in case a rate was wrong, client picked it up and you fixed it, and then you just recalculate his invoice. Tax is very important. By default, the system comes in a generic format. So it says tax, and it doesn't have a percentage. I would recommend changing it immediately to VAT, 15%, and saving it. Very important, if you change it here, so say, for example, government raises the VAT from 15% to 16%. If you come and make the change here to 16% and you say apply to all users, it will still apply the old rate 15 because you haven't saved it yet. So you save whatever your change is, then go back into the tax column and then verify that it says 16 or 15 in this case, and apply it to all users. It will verify it and then it'll apply to all the users on the system. We've got no users yet in the system, so that's why it was so quick. The next thing you want to do from settings is set up your default user experience. So this is when you create a user. That's a good point. The system's giving me an error. It won't let me create a user or default because we don't have a billing structure. We've got no least cost routing for the user. So that is important. We need to set up a least cost routing, and it's just a matter of creating it right now. So we'll just call it LCR, least cost routing, and we'll create it. In the providers, you would put the system generated provider, which would be Network Platforms, and now it's created. Now if we go back to default user, the system will tell you there's no available tariffs. Please create a tariff. Otherwise the user will be unable to call. We will be able to create, it's not going to let us do it. So the system's given us another warning here that there's no available tariffs for the user. So we can't create a default user parameters at the moment. If we just try it, it'll just default back to the screen each time and not let us do it. So it's going to force us to create a tariff. The easiest way to create a tariff initially is to go into the providers, get the, so have a look on the Network Platforms Reseller rate sheet, click on that, export that as a CSV file. So that would be your cost prices. That will export a file. It's taking a little bit of time at the moment. There we go. It's called it rates ZAR. We would now need to manipulate that and import it back in. I'm going to do it, just import it straight back in. I'm not going to manipulate it at the moment. I'll show you how you do that in another video when we go into creating tariffs. So I'm just going to import that tariff into the tariffs, and I'm going to create a new tariff here and just I'm going to call that a cost rates or cost sheet. So we create that. It's got no rates in it at the moment. We can then import from the CSV file, and we had a CSV file here. Let me just get it quickly. Okay, so to import it, we just select the file. In this case, it would be that rates file. We would then upload it. It would automatically, because we exported it from the system, it would automatically have picked up some columns. Most notably, the important ones is the prefix. In other words, the dialing prefix followed by the rate, that's your selling rate. Effective date would automatically default to today's date and time. Connection fee, if it was available, we're not going to worry about that. I'm just going to set that to 0. Increment, the default is to increment per second. In other words, that per second billing. Minimal time, we don't charge a minimum. You could, though, if you wanted to. Ghost percentage, there's no ghost percentages. Destination, that's the description of the destination, like Afghanistan in this case, is on showing. Blocked, we're not going to import anything blocked at the moment. So I'm just going to import those, assign those columns. It would then show us a sample of the import and tell you that there's 96,000 lines in the file. We would confirm that. And then it would say creating new rates, processing it. So remember it said there was 96,169. So it's successfully imported it. If we now go back to the rates, you'll see now we've got 96,168. The reason why one left, because the first line was the descriptions of each of the columns. You could then now create very easily, you could create a user rate. And you can create that in two formats, as in a user retail tariff or a wholesale tariff. I would recommend always using the wholesale tariffs, and we'll discuss why in another video. But I'm just going to, for ease and simplicity, I'm going to copy this cost rate structure into a new rate structure with, for example, a 20% markup. It's now going to copy all these rates, mark each of them up by 20%, and then give us a new rate sheet that we can rename and then use as our default rate sheet for any new user that we create. Okay, it's telling us the tariff's been created. It added 20%. If we now go back to the tariffs, you'll see we've now got a new wholesale tariff, which was the same name that we had before, cost, plus 0 cents markup, but 20% percentage. Edit this, and we can rename it here to default user rate sheet, for example. You could call it anything you wanted. Now we've got default user rate sheets, and now if we go to our default users, and we can now set up all the default user parameters. So important here, minimum user length. I would never let anybody use a single username, or realistically a minimum username length of 6 at least. Password length, I would recommend, the default is an 8. I would recommend making this a little bit longer because fraud is rife in the voice industry. Default user type is he's a user, he's got full access to the system to manage his accounts. The least cost rates is that LCR that we created earlier. Tariff that we're going to give this user is wholesale. All these settings we choose here can be changed later on. There's nothing that's specific and won't let you change. You can change everything you want. This is just the default user. So in other words, when we create a new user, this will be the defaults that user gets. You can go and change it thereafter. Daily balance limit. I would never leave these on unlimited. I would recommend always setting a daily balance limit just to protect yourselves in case your person who adds a user account doesn't do anything. Daily balance is a fraud protection mechanism, so it ensures that a client can't exceed that amount of value on a specific day. Credit limit is his default overall credit limit for the month. So let's just give him 100 Rand credit. and we're setting his daily limit to max of 50 Rand per day, for example. We're not doing minimal charges, but you can enable it if you want. Postpaid, this is going to be a postpaid user. You can create prepaid users and give them a starting balance. Allow lost calls, be careful with that. If you tick that up on, users will be able to dial out to destinations even if the rate you've set is lower than the cost price. If you leave it off, they won't. They'll get an error if they try to call that destination. The system won't allow you to make a lost call unnecessarily. Call limit. This is for amount of simultaneous calls that the client could have. 0 is unlimited. Just as a protection mechanism, I'd set your default to maybe 4. Inbound concurrent, this is inbound calls to his DID. You want to have a limit. Default currency is going to be South African rands. You could change it. Time zone, we are in Harare, Pretoria, and I believe Pretoria is here. Let's have a look. Pretoria. GMT +2, Pretoria. PBX pool, we'll explain in another video. Show stats are from the user's perspective. So in other words, if he was in a different time zone and you turned that on, it would show it all his calls based on his time zone. To start an account off as blocked, you could. Generally, you want it not blocked. Warning balances, I would turn those on. From the user's perspective, the user gets maybe a warning when he has when his calls drop below 50 Rand, or his balance drops below 50 Rand. A reseller, that would be you would get the warning maybe when he gets to 100 Rand. So you'd get the warning first, then he would get the warning second. Then invoicing, you want to generate invoices. Do you want to show calls that had a 0 cost or not? Do you want to send him an Excel spreadsheet? Generally, you want to send a simplified PDF and a more detailed CSV file to the customer. You could include caller IDs, you could include destinations, you could include calls. On the right-hand side at the top, this is the company's details. Generally, we're in South Africa, so we would choose South Africa as the default country. The web address, these are defaults, so you're normally not going to fill those in. Registration address is if it's different, if any information is different from previously given. So let's go to South Africa on here. Email, this is the email address that a client would have. As this is default, you would not fill it in at this point. You'll notice it picked up that VAT tax type that we set earlier. And if you want to enable blacklist or whitelist, these are user created and controlled. At the moment, we can set them to no. And now we change this defaults. So those defaults are when you create a new user's account. This would be all the default settings. The next is to create the default SIP account parameters. Generally, this would be your codecs, what codecs you would like to use. The system will transcode, and you can drag codecs around as you like. So if you want Opus to be as a higher priority, you want G729 in there, you want Speaks, you want A-Law, MuLaw, ILBC, on off your choice of what you'd like to enable. You shouldn't need to change anything else here on the default parameters. I would just save that. And that would be for if you created a new SIP device, it would get these parameters. So where that is used, these two default user and default devices, is under users. When you click on users, you create your first user, and you'll see it would have automatically picked up those defaults that we defined, 50 Rand, the default rate sheet, the default credit limit, the default country, time zone, all these parameters came in automatically. And this would, you'd then assign these to the user and change them as you want. But at least your protection is in place already for concurrent calls and a daily limit to protect you, just in case one of your staff forgets to make the change. At least your defaults are in place. In the next video, we're going to discuss the tariffs. That's critical to the system and how it determines call rates to assign to customers and billing entries. Look forward to seeing you in the next video.